Chop chop! Welcome everybody to Americans Learn. Where we last left off, the king of Sicily has sided with Hannibal, the animal, the cannibal, Danimal. We're slowly winning, but it seems to me that Rome, or at least the Italian peninsula, is at risk of losing some key cities. Now, we all know how I feel about this, since we're all true Romans. True Romans, forever, 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 forever. So there you go, true Romans, forever. We all know, number one, that Rome will win. We are victorious. But right now, that monster, that cannibal, that Hannibal, seems to be on the warpath of trying to alter history. Well, we're not going to have that. The only way we're ever going to alter history is if we time travel to save Aurelian. But we will do that for another day, because I might have found another wonderful documentary series on Aurelian. And if this video gets 1 million views, there you go. We will go ahead and join on the campaign again for the great and all-powerful Aurelian. But until then, let's go ahead and get started and enjoy this video in a 3, a 2, and an uno. Grab your swords, true Romans. We must save the Republic, as we should all the time, every time. Let's go. Let's go.
Hieronymus promptly departed the capital with his entourage and headed for Leontini, where he enjoyed strong support and would be safe from his enemies in Syracuse. But the pro-Roman faction had had enough of the young monarch. While en route to Leontini, the king was assassinated. However, in an unusual twist,
he got what was coming to him. Simple as that. He got what was coming to him. How dare you put Sicily in the hands of the Carthaginians?
Instead of the throne going to a pro-Roman candidate, Hannibal's allies Hippocrates and Epicaides were elected magistrates on the Syracusan ruling council. They immediately set up their base in Leontini. With 4,000 troops under their command, they began to raid Roman towns and countryside. Still, Appius Claudius managed to recover most of the territory held by the Greek rebels, with only the northeastern corner of Sicily remaining hostile to Rome.
Ah, rebel scum!
Marcellus conducted the second attack. In August, he stormed and took Leontini.
Good.
2,000 Carthaginian sympathizers were lined up in the streets, beaten and killed, while Hippocrates and
2,000 is a high number, but I approve of this. Don't betray Rome.
the Epicaides retreated with the remnants of their army to Herbesos. There they convinced the city's commander to bring 8,000 troops to the city of Syracuse to help repel the Romans. Marcellus, meanwhile, took 1/3 of the army and moved into Sicily's interior. His plan was to reduce Syracusan strongholds of Haena, Herbesos, and the fortified coastal cities of Megara and Helorus, as well as to finally deal with the Greek rebel cities in the mountainous northeast that tied up significant Roman resources in the area. Knowing that this operation would take months to complete, he tasked Appius Claudius with preparing the remaining 2/3 of the army for the siege of the city of Syracuse.
Oh no.
By the end of 214 BC, it was clear that the Hannibalic hegemony in Italy had weakened. After
Good, let it weaken, but it's still not weak enough.
years of trying, Hanno was unsuccessful in capturing Reggio, an important city that controlled the Straits of Messina.
Good.
Rome captured the strategically important town of Casilinum, and now Capua was on the defensive. The Romans also recovered towns in Samnium, Lucania, and northern Apulia. Worse, without reinforcements, funds, and supplies promised to him by Carthage, Hannibal was by now obviously struggling to maintain control over his territory in southern Italy.
That's what you get. That's for can I.
He was losing momentum,
Good.
and he needed new battlefield victories that would persuade fresh defections from Rome. To achieve this, he set his sights on Tarentum. At the start of 213 BC, Rome elected Fabius Maximus's son, Quintus Fabius, and Sempronius Gracchus as consuls. Hannibal's own war effort this year would reach a new intensity as he probed for new vulnerabilities of his enemy. In March, he moved into the lands of the Salentini, the so-called heel of Italy, which offered rich foraging grounds. The presence of his army there encouraged Philip to continue his own war efforts in Illyria. This forced the Romans to send more troops from the Salento to Greece, which allowed dissent to grow among the Tarentine, Messapian, and Lapygian communities. The ultimate objective of Hannibal's operation in the Salento was the capture of Tarentum, but for much of 213 BC, he focused his efforts on rallying local support, understanding that to achieve his goal, he must first weaken Rome's authority in the region. Fortunately for Hannibal, the Messapian aristocracy suffered economic decline under Roman rule.
Yeah, because they need to know better. How dare they? They got some rebel thoughts. Well, then guess what? Be more loyal to Rome.
Especially since the start of the war, and many were by now eager to throw off the Roman yoke. By early summer, several cities defected to Hannibal, among which were Uzentum, a strategic hub in the heel of Italy, and Mandoria, just east of Tarentum, which could serve as a base of operations. Other important centers also joined him, such as Naratum and Hydruntum, as well as Lupiae, the second most populous city in the Salento Peninsula. Hannibal would spend the spring and summer seasons forming a buffer zone between Tarentum and the Roman base at Brundisium. He knew that as his presence increased in the Salento, the Tarentine nobility would eventually advance their own clandestine anti-Roman plans. But perhaps more importantly, Hannibal welcomed the much-needed new recruits from the region into his army.
Traitors, every single one of them. How dare they betray their true Roman friends?
However, to the north in Apulia, Rome continued with the strategy of attacking Hannibal's allies during his absence. Consul Quintus Fabius besieged and stormed Arpi, the epicenter of support for Hannibal in Apulia. Heavy fighting in the narrow streets during a rainy night convinced the consul to offer terms to avoid massive casualties for his own army. Fabius agreed to allow the 5,000-strong Carthaginian garrison to leave unharmed.
God damn it, Fabius.
In exchange for giving up the city. While the loss of Arpi was a setback for Hannibal, his hold over Apulia was evident to the Romans. Just like Arpi, the other Apulian cities were garrisoned, well provisioned, and were now on high alert. Dislodging the Carthaginians was far from being a foregone conclusion. Some good news for Hannibal came from Brutium, where Hanno the Elder defeated a pro-Roman Lucanian army and advanced into Lucania to recover several cities. This victory did much to boost confidence among the Greek cities of southern Italy that Carthage would win the war. But while
Keep dreaming. Keep on dreaming. Rome stands vigilant and strong, as it should all the time, every time. You know what? I'm really getting tired of these traitors saying that Rome's going to lose this war.
While Hannibal and Hanno renewed the offensive, in Sicily the pro-Carthaginian faction was on the defensive.
Come on.
By April 213 BC, the contest on the island reached a crescendo. Marcellus had brought much of the island under Roman control and had commenced the siege of the city of Syracuse, the last major pro-Carthaginian holdout in Sicily.
Beautiful.
In July, across the sea in Africa, for the first time since the start of the war, trouble was brewing in Carthage's own backyard. Numidia, a vast Berber region, was divided into two kingdoms in the 3rd century BC. The Massalii were a Berber federation in eastern Numidia, formed by an amalgamation of smaller tribes ruled over by King Gaia. Their relationship with Carthage resembled that of a protectorate. The powerful empire dominated Massalii politics through skillful diplomatic maneuvering, marriages, economic dependency, and playing off local tribes and kingdom rivalries. As such, the Massalii fully committed to fighting alongside Carthage by sending both regular troops and mercenaries, their strong and proficient cavalry force being a crucial component of Carthaginian armies. In western Numidia were the powerful Massaili. They were an extremely rich Berber kingdom that could support a large army, and just like their eastern neighbors, they possessed a strong cavalry. As such, their king Syphax always harbored ambitions to rule a fully independent kingdom. To this end, at the start of the Second Punic War, he was sympathetic to the Romans, but he had to refrain from joining their side in the war.
Come on, man, just say you're a true Roman. Join us and save the world from Carthaginian propaganda.
Because in 218 BC, Carthage was a vast, wealthy superpower. It dominated North African politics and held strong influence within Syphax's kingdom, including a prominent pro-Carthaginian faction and close economic ties that benefited most of the Massaili nobility, who would oppose siding with Rome. But while Syphax could not openly be hostile to Carthage, he showed defiance by remaining largely neutral and refused to send regular troops to fight for Carthage. However, many thousands of Numidian mercenaries from his kingdom did serve in Carthaginian armies in both Iberia and Italy, though their services did not come cheap. But now, in 213 BC, messages coming from Rome claimed that the tide of the war was turning. Persuaded, Syphax swayed sections of the Massaili nobility and decided it was time to go to war with Carthage. The Scipio brothers sent Quintus Statorius, a centurion from Iberia, to help train Syphax's infantry in the Roman way of war.
Okay, good. All right, we got Syphax on our side. What could go wrong? He seems like a solid guy.
As well as the art of fortification. To counter the threat, King Gaius's son, Prince Massinissa, was put in charge of 30,000 troops to confront the threat. The two armies met west of Cirta, where Massinissa completely routed Syphax and his Roman.
Oh, Syphax, come on! I've seen weaklings fight out of a wet paper bag harder than you did.
Trained army. The Massailian king fled west towards the lands of the Mauri, where he would spend several months building a new army. Despite this victory, the Carthaginians knew that Syphax was a serious threat that had to be neutralized. Fortunately for Carthage, by the autumn of 213, the situation in Iberia had stabilized, and the Senate could afford to recall Hasdrubal Barca, ordering him to prepare to cross with his army into western Numidia. Back at Tarentum, news reached the city that some of the noble hostages held by Rome attempted to escape, but were caught and executed. This provoked outrage among Tarentine aristocrats, further strengthening the support for Hannibal. By executing the hostages, Rome lost much of the leverage they had over the anti-Roman Tarentine aristocracy.
Well, it was an accident. Somebody misunderstood the orders.
A coup de main was not long in coming, led by young aristocrats Philemenus and Nico. Throughout the winter, they gathered more supporters within the city, and once the snow melted, they put their plan into action. Under the guise of going on a lavish hunting expedition, the conspirators rode to Hannibal's winter camp, just 3 days' march from Tarentum. Hannibal's terms were too good to pass up. Tarentum's freedom was guaranteed. No tribute would be extracted by Carthage. The city was free to appoint their own magistrates, who would rule under Tarentine laws. They did not have to accept a Punic garrison within the walls, unless they chose to do so. Roman property and citizens, however, were to be seized by Hannibal and used for ransom or sold into slavery. Philemenus and Nico readily accepted. They stood up, went to where Hannibal was seated, and whispered in his ear their plan for the betrayal of Rome.
Well, you can't trust anybody now these days. You got nothing but snakes in the world. Snakes and scumbags.
The next day, Hannibal released a small portion of cattle from his baggage train. The conspirators then brought these back to Tarentum, claiming to have found them roaming free and had captured them. They repeated this ruse several times in the weeks following. Philemenus preferred hunting at night, supposedly to avoid frequent Punic patrols. He would always return with plenty to show for, and was eager to share the spoils with the guards and commander at the side gate he used. The Romans had gotten so used to the route.
Oh my God. As someone who's done site security when I was in the Marine Corps, you got to remember, beware of patterns, because that's what's going to happen. Patterns playing out. Don't you find it suspicious that he's always finding cattle and then feeding off the guards? Like, where's the cattle coming from? He's stealing cows from some poor farmer.
That whenever they heard Philemenus's whistle during the night, they would let him in without checking, eager to get their hands on the prize. Then, during one night in early March, Hannibal led his fastest 8,000 cavalry and 2,000 Gallic and Libyan infantry out of the camp. 80 Numidian riders screened far ahead of the column, with orders to capture or kill anyone they encounter, but otherwise they were to give off the impression that they were a regular foraging party. 3 days later, Hannibal stopped the column in a gorge not far from the city, hidden from view. Here he rested the men for a day and briefed his officers on his plan. The following night, the attack began. In complete silence, Hannibal led 6,000 horse and 1,000 foot towards the Temenid Gate, accompanied by Nico and a group of conspirators. The troops were ordered to stay compact and obey Hannibal's every order. To the south of Hannibal, Philemenus led a group of 1,000 Libyan infantry towards the side gate he regularly used for his hunting expeditions. 2,000 cavalry were left as a rear guard to cover the escape or reinforce the attack. The Tarentine conspirators deliberately chose this night because a pre-arranged feast in the city was in full swing.
You see, Romans, don't you think you'd realize it by now that every time there's a feast or a celebration, that's when Hannibal would attack? Yet everyone's getting drunk and fat and stupid. Stop being stupid.
And Livius, the commander of the Roman garrison, was in attendance.
Ugh, dummy.
Through hours of song and laughter, they kept him drinking until he had to be carried home. By the time the music died down, the gates were breached. Hearing Philemenus's whistle coming from the darkness, the guards allowed him through the side entrance. While they inspected their prize, 30 Libyans rushed in.
Dummy.
Quickly overwhelming the few sentries, they proceeded to open the gate for the rest of the infantry. Meanwhile, with the help of the conspirators, Hannibal breached the main gate, surprising most of the guards in their sleep, and rushed through the streets towards the Forum, where he was supposed to meet Philemenus and the Libyan infantry. Disorganized Roman troops rushed into the streets, but were quickly overrun.
Morons.
Livius and his officers escaped towards the citadel at the last minute. Adding to the confusion, conspirators waiting at pre-designated locations around the city blew Roman military trumpets, sounding off a mix of different orders. This had the effect of sending in Roman troops piecemeal into the meat grinder. However, a good portion of the garrison managed to retreat across the narrow promontory to the citadel before Hannibal could reach it. Livius sent an urgent message via boat to the nearby Metapontum. By early morning,
Lousy drunk. Marcus, what were you thinking drinking on the job?
Hannibal ordered the building of a wall to cut off the citadel from the rest of the city. The citadel controlled the only entrance into the Tarentum harbour, and for now the men inside could receive supplies by sea. The entire garrison of Metapontum arrived several days later.
Good.
Hannibal made several attempts to storm the citadel. Meanwhile, to prevent a further influx of Roman supplies and manpower, he organized the transport of Tarentine ships from the harbor overland, dragging the galleys through the streets and into the sea, from where they could blockade the citadel. The direct assaults failed, and once the wall was complete, Hannibal left the Tarentines in charge of the blockade. The capture of Tarentum was a bitter blow for the Romans, and a great yet incomplete victory for Hannibal.
I hope we burn Tarentum to the ground. Something tells me that whole city needs a big reset.
The large Roman garrison was determined to withstand the siege at all costs, often enduring near-famine conditions. This meant that the power of Tarentum could not be fully utilized for Hannibal's war effort, as resources needed to be allocated towards blockading the defenders from receiving supplies and reinforcements by sea. Nevertheless, by taking Tarentum, Hannibal caused a domino effect. More Messapian communities joined him, and much of the Salento Peninsula was now under his control. Metapontum and Heraclea also defected. Even in Brundisium, rumors circulated that the Messapian aristocracy within the city were ready to betray Rome. By April 213 BC, Hannibal's territory in southern Italy reached its greatest extent. But the Carthaginian army would not be resting for long. A rider bearing grim news entered Tarentum and demanded to see Hannibal in person.
Good. All right. What's the grim news? Please. Carthage has been burnt to the ground. Carthage has been burnt to the ground.
Out of breath, the messenger dismounted, and as he ran in to be received by Hannibal, he fell to the ground, his hand extending a note. It was from Capua. The message read, "We are besieged by 4 legions. Come at once."
Well, I think we could all universally agree right here. Capua's getting what it deserves. Hey, that's what happens. Hey, I don't like snakes. I don't like liars. I don't like cheaters. I don't like scumbags. And I don't like people who like to lie. Guess what, Capua? You sided with Hannibal and you played yourself. World's smallest violin, right there. See? Boom. You're going to get a little bit of a skull right there, because that's what you get for betraying Rome. You're going to get this. You're going to get that right there. That's what you're going to get, because why? It's funny. So until then, guess what? Yes, you all might have noticed there's a new change. Guess what? New camera setup and everything else. So until then, all you beautiful people here at Americans Learns who are watching us, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the ring bell notification. And yes, my fellow true Romans, if there's true Roman content that we should check out, because after all, we saw the whole series of an unbiased history of Rome, and I believe that it is possible to also check out the full series in which there was a continuation of the Byzantine Empire. If that was something that you guys like, perhaps we'll do a special live stream. But the only way we're going to know is if we get feedback from you, our viewing audience. So if you want to see that, type your thoughts, your comments in the comment section below so we can continue on. Because after all, we won't know until you tell us.